All right, thank you for listening to the Dan Time Podcast. I'm your host, Dan McArdle. It's hard to believe 2024 is drawing to a close. Just like people tell you, I can't believe how fast your kids are growing. Wow, she's getting so big. Where does the time go? All that stuff, all the cliches. Well, it certainly feels like the old folks are onto something when they say you're going to blink and time is just going to disappear, because that's what's happening. But what a ride, what a terrific run through just an all-star cast of guests on this show. You would think with the name Dan Time, it's just fully loaded, front to back with Dans from January to December. You would be surprised to know that of all the guests this year, 13 folks have been named Dan. That's out of 78 episodes. Now, some of those broken up into parts 1 and 2. But I've had people of all stripes and backgrounds and stories to share. But I want to tell you something. For those of you who listen to podcasts regularly, I want to roll out some statistics for you. As of February 2024, there's about 3.2 million podcasts out there. Over 100 million Americans alone listen to podcasts each week. And out of all these productions, only about 20% of podcasts survived the first year. When I launched this project, as I call it, I saw that figure. 80% fail, 20% make it past 12 months. I wrote that down. There was never any doubt, never any plan to divert and shut it down early. I knew if I started this, I'm in it for the long game. I've got promises to keep. I don't care if it's to 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people, or just to myself. I'm setting out to do this. It's a weekly production, and by God, I'm going to be a part of that 20%. With that being said, and I think some of this stems from the pandemic year and just the explosion of amateur podcasting. But there is some criticism from regular people and folks in legacy media towards amateur podcasters. I don't spend a lot of time on this show getting confrontational. It's not part of what I'm trying to put out there. But I hear comments. I read comments. People that I like and respect on the national scene who say things like, anybody with a microphone and a recorder has a podcast. And I think it's pretty short-sighted when you think about the people who have come up with a theme, come up with an outline, and I think it undermines the work of many of us who are putting in the time, making the sacrifices necessary to publish a consistent product. If you start a podcast and you just publish whenever for about 8 weeks, 12 weeks, and then you just drop off, and then you come back for 2 weeks or 2 months, then you drop off and you come back, maybe you don't come back. That's one thing. If you're putting together a show with or without guests, and you've got something to say, something to instruct people, some wisdom to impart, some mechanical sense to share, some perspective on making things, building things, performing, whatever. If you've demonstrated that this isn't just a flash in the pan, it's not just a fad, it's not just a fleeting interest for you in the spring of one year, should get a little bit more respect. So it grinds my gears a little bit, not a lot, but enough to say something. And really, when it comes from people in mainstream media, the way that I take that criticism is it's not so much, hey, I had to work for this. Hey, I had to pay my dues. Hey, there was a competition and I won and I got to this place in life. I really think that some of those folks are upset that all of a sudden there's these people that never existed in the 80s, the 90s, the early 2000s that are now soaking up their rays, and they're taking away some of there's more fish in the pond. Because anybody that does something along these lines, like a podcast, has an ego. That's not a terrible thing. But some folks on terrestrial radio, satellite radio, they've been used to being the top dog for many, many years, and all of a sudden, but they still are. Some podcasters are showing the average listener that, hey, we're not much different. These people cracked through when there was a very narrow path, and we didn't. But enough about that. I just really want to put that message out there. If you are pursuing your own dreams independently, writing your own music, writing your own lyrics, slapping together a podcast, keep doing it. Don't worry yourself with some of the awkwardness that comes along with it. Many of us do not have an editor, another set of eyes, another set of ears saying, "Hey, Dan, that part wasn't." I would delete that. So we're just going on instinct here, and I would just encourage those of you, don't feel like you're less than. If you have an idea, if you're already doing this, keep doing it. And if you're thinking about something like this for 2025, don't doubt yourself because of those things that you hear in the media, because often the people saying it are just miffed, to put it lightly, that there's more of us out here making them seem a little more human. All right, with that, this episode is going to jump around a little bit here. Wanted to also say that in order to put a podcast out week after week and commit to it, you've got to deal with what life throws at you. And without getting into any detail, life in 2024 had me in and out of some headlocks. There were some episodes, there were some Zoom calls with guests where seconds leading up to the start of the episode, there was a great deal of tumult going on. That's happening right now. You might be hearing my 2-year-old on the other side of the door screaming for me. Now, my wife, Natalie, is on the other side of that door, but if you're trying to do something like this and you've got kids, you always have demands on your time, on your Dan time. And you either have to push through, and those little ones have to know that they got to wait, or you just give up on it. You say, this is too hard. This is too much. So just trying to paint some color on it, shed some light. All right, let's get to the Dan Time Pod inbox. It's been a few weeks since we've done this, so just going to jump around a little bit. Dear Sir, this is Barrister Chena Sirawong from Sirawong Law Firms, Thailand. I'm writing to inform you that a client of ours has left a reward of $5 million for you. This gesture is in acknowledgement of your past efforts in assisting with a funds transfer project that, unfortunately, did not succeed. Our client, who wishes to remain anonymous, I'm sure they do, for security reasons, has completed a separate funds transfer with our assistance and wants to compensate you for your previous expenditures. Please respond at your earliest convenience to discuss how you can receive this reward. Best regards, Barrister Chana Sirawong. Hey, Dan Time Pod. I came across your Instagram and was really impressed by your content. May I ask if you've ever thought about growing your account with real targeted followers in your niche while boosting engagement? Pretty straightforward marketing email here. Nothing too out of whack. Hey, Dan McArdle. I haven't heard back from you. This will be the last email I'm sending you. Hey, Dan McArdle. Love what you're doing with Dan Time and what you've been able to build after 82 episodes. Super inspiring. He is counting the bonus episodes. We know that a lot of high-end podcasts like Dan Time struggle with high-end production and to, open parentheses, really, close parentheses, make money with their podcast. All right, not a ton of excitement there on the Dan Time inbox front, but a couple. All right. Finally showing up on AI Overview. It's a big deal for the Dan Time podcast. I don't know how long it takes to pop in here, but if you search Dan Time, here's what AI has to say. The Dan Time podcast is generally praised for its in-depth and engaging conversations with a wide range of guests, primarily focusing on the music industry, offering listeners a unique perspective into the lives and careers of musicians, exploring topics like playing style, influences, and the realities of life on the road, with a relaxed and conversational style that makes it enjoyable for both dedicated music fans and casual listeners. I won't read it all, but I'm very flattered. This is the first time in my life that I have been moved almost to tears by what artificial intelligence has to say about me and this product. A couple other things I want to touch on here. Some of the guests this year have released new music. As you know, Dan Brodie. Look for more singles from Dan's spoken word project. The latest one, Everything Apart From Her, I just completely adore. It is back-to-back, play it over and over again type material. You're going to fall in love. Dan Harrison released his first full-length this year, as far as I know. Dan is such a thoughtful guy with an unconventional story that led him to Nashville and his career in country music. You might be surprised. Check it out. There's a track on there for you. We Went South. I've talked about it before. I just think this is a banger. This is a future hit, whether it's for Dan or for another artist. I said it here. I believe that wholeheartedly. Dan Sharp. Just cannot say enough about Dan Sharp. He released Between the Brave, Bold, and Given Up this year. Mellophobemusic.com wrote that Between the Brave, Bold, and Given Up is a moving journey through the highs and lows of human emotion, blending the depth of his previous work with a fresh, dynamic edge. With Between the Brave, Bold, and Given Up, Sharp solidifies his place as a unique voice in contemporary indie music, offering a deeply personal, yet universally relatable listening experience. The mix of new material and familiar tracks from his previous EP, Man Don't Cry, creates a cohesive and enriching album that captures the essence of Sharp's artistic evolution. What I'll say about Dan Sharp, and I told Dan Brodie this, I'm not a music critic. I'm not trying to be. Dan Sharp's music, it's great in the car. It's great in the shower. It's great at the gym. It's great when you're having a day and you need that song to carry you out of that moment, carry you up and out of it. Check him out, Dan Sharp. Dan Zlotnick released a Christmas song this year, Christmas Eve for Mrs. Claus. Give it a listen. If you missed that episode with Dan, and even if you just missed the episode but you don't want to go back and listen to it, check him out. Dan Zlotnick, the DZB 2023 live album, is, I described it on our episode, it's just a road trip type record. If you're going to be driving for a while and you don't want to change songs, you want to just kind of get into one style for a minute, you're going to be all in as soon as you hear the guitar solo that Dan plays on Last Train. Had a great conversation earlier this year with Danielle Cosby. Really recommend you checking her out. Highly recommend her 2024 singles, Chameleon and You. Y-O-U, You. Daniela Galasso. Big fan of Daniela's stuff. She just released her first full-length album, Comfortable, November 1st. This will have some songs that, if you listen to her back earlier this year, you're going to recognize Yesterday's Story, Embers, Wait, but a few new tracks as well. If you're a fan of Taylor Swift, somebody you know is a fan of Taylor Swift, really just dreamy, serene pop music. I don't always, it's not where I always turn, but it's somebody I'm so glad that I discovered through this project, because I can recommend Daniela Galasso to multiple people in my network. So check her out as well. Could go on and on. You guys know how I feel about Dana Wylie, Harry Gregg, and Secondhand Dream Car. I wear the hat. I wear the t-shirt. I'm a major fan. If you're a fan of Tedeschi Trucks Band, no reason at all that you shouldn't dive into this group, this 6 to sometimes 9-piece super group out of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. The Edmonton Journal wrote that the debut album, Answer the Call, ranges from folksy numbers to barn-burning soul stormers. The title track is buoyant and punctuated by jubilant horns, 8 of spades, sachets, and hip shakes its way out of your speakers. And If You Got a Story is a slow burn torch song with a truly astonishing vocal performance from Wylie. The songs on Answer the Call beg to be heard in a live setting, but there are enough recorded moments on the record to make a listener reach for the replay button. I'll jump in and say, lay down the load. The title track, Answer the Call, 8 of spades, Could Be Anything, The Stupid Things I Do, front to back. Can't get enough of this record. Edmonton Journal goes on to write, in an age when most supergroups are all sizzle, no steak, Secondhand Dream Car is a delectable auditory feast for your ears. So I don't spend a lot of time lately, I'd say the past few months, I just don't spend a lot of time saying, hey, give the show a like, a listen, subscribe. I do say tell a friend about it. Sounds more conversational. I just feel like everybody says, please like and subscribe. You just hear that everywhere. How about you're listening to the show? I feel like, you need a call to action. You do. I'm not going to disagree with that. But when I'm barking out instructions, I just don't want to sound like everything that's out there. If you're on social media, Instagram is probably where I'm most active. I don't really love social media. I like, and this is probably against the advice that would be given to me, but I pretty much take a minimalist approach to my social media presence. I just can't bring myself to care enough. So you might see, I did a video New Year's Eve last year. I think I'm probably going to do another one. And when I say video, about 12 seconds or 20 seconds, whatever it is, of just whatever's on my mind for looking ahead to the next year. For me, and then, look, everybody's different, but for me, it gets a little icky. The idea of posting videos of myself talking several times a week, every week. I think it started to bother me. I did the Friday challenge, whatever that was, from August of 23 till about the new year. And I didn't really like going to my Instagram page and I just see a sea of Dan, just me, my face, kind of in various places. Like, no, I don't want that. I don't want people to land here and then that's what they see. It's just this grid of my face. It's not what this is about. This is about shining a light on the standouts from the Daniverse, the people that you ordinarily would never have heard about. Maybe you would have. If you look at Dan Maines from Clutch, maybe you listen to Clutch. And he doesn't do a lot of interviews, so maybe you were happy to see that. I was very happy with that conversation and how Dan was willing to open up. Danny Laverty. It's a fun guy to follow. See, there are people on social media that just do it effortlessly. It makes sense to see more of them doing things and putting content out there. I love following Danny Laverty. Love Daniel Eachus. Check out Daniel Eachus. We talked in 2023, but he's got some new comedy dates. Guy is hilarious. He came up on my shuffle last week, and I'm serious. The comedy album, Where is Daniel? Any bit on that record is going to brighten your day, make you laugh. Check him out. Just looking over the list here, Dan Straley. Not long after we talked, I think it was the last interview he gave was on Dan Time before signing with the Chicago Cubs organization and pitching in Iowa last season. Dan's a great guy. If you're doubting yourself in any way, on any level, go back to that conversation. or check out some of the other content that he has with the Journeyman podcast. Lance Gasaway, Brian Hernandez Jr., the owner and jockey for the Kentucky Derby winning horse, Mystic Dan. Thanks to those conversations and Mystic Dan's historic win at Churchill Downs, I've begun to follow horse racing more closely. I really enjoy the sport. Dr. Glenn Fleisig, the first really esteemed fellow on this show, Dr. Fleisig, the biomechanical man on Instagram. All right, well, this has truly been a ramble. It's kind of a year-end episode, and I just want to take a minute to thank you for being a part of this show, for hopefully looking forward to it. You know, sometimes the shows come around 11:30 p.m. if you're on Central Time, Sunday night. Sometimes it's early in the morning, Monday morning, but you get something every week. I'm proud to have this in your rotation, and I really appreciate you as a listener. Thanks for coming along for the ride. Send me a message if you have any thoughts. If you'd like to nominate your friend or your dad or your coworker, it could be a Dan, a Danielle. In the new year, we're going to have a Dante, a Danica. There's many names. It's a big umbrella here. And never said this before, but if you've got a baby on the way, or you have a friend that's expecting a baby, get them to consider one of these names for that newborn. That could be Danny. That could be Daniela. That could be Dana. There's nothing against naming your boy Dan. Doesn't have to be Daniel. Could be. And then you just immediately call him Dan, but you can name a little boy Dan. When was the last time that you took your child to preschool or elementary school and they told you about their buddy Dan, a little 6-year-old friend on the playground named Dan? I want more of those in the world. That's my purpose in life for this podcast. If I do nothing else, it's not a celebration. It's not a celebration of me, as you know. It's having fun, maybe having some unnecessary fun with the Dan theme. Who else is doing it? Who else is doing this? All right, that's it for this basically Ramblesode, a 2024 recap. This will be episode 79. And remember, when you go to Dollar General to get yourself some more K-Cups, it's 8:30 at night. You just realized you're out of coffee and you can't start the morning this way. So you're running up there. Make sure to call your wife, call your girlfriend, call your partner or your roommate. Do you need more dryer sheets? Do you need more scent beads? Do you need other products that are not important to me, but they may be important to you? Make sure that you make that phone call or text. It goes a long way, a long way. Do you need more Swiffer pads? Those are very important. And if anything in 2025 is looking scary, it's looking uncertain, remember who you are, not who somebody in your life always told you that you weren't, or somebody in your life always encouraged you to do something else because your interest wasn't of interest to them. Don't forget who you are. Put your talents to use and have fun with yourself, and others will follow suit and have fun as well. That's it for the Dan Time Podcast. I appreciate you, and Happy New Year.